Democracy Wall in Peking, like the Lenin shipyards in Poland, symbolized dissent and the demand for political freedom. But the wall came up against the full weight of the official Chinese news machine. The People's Daily has more potential readers than any other paper in the world. But how do you spread the communist word every day to 1,000 million Chinese? The People's Daily, the official Communist Party paper, is sent everywhere in China under heavy guard. In the country that invented printing, words can be offensive weapons. The People's Daily is the centerpiece of the elaborate information apparatus to direct the thoughts and actions of a quarter of the world's population. Distribution methods from the simplest to the most sophisticated ensure that every day the Chinese people know precisely what the Politburo wants them to think. The paper is one of the only authentic guides to official thinking in a country that has one of the most secretive governments in the world. In China, news is very different from that of the West. It's almost always good news. We use news to encourage the people, say the government. On the commune radio, uplifting extracts from the editorials are read out. Even if you don't buy the People's Daily, there's no escape from it. And in the fields, there's more reading from the editorials. Control of the press and propaganda machine is central to the Chinese system of government. For 30 years, the people have been directed by an endless series of slogans, threats and orders on the best way to build communism. But now the communist leaders are attempting to put the whole information machine into reverse as a result of the most dramatic Chinese U-turn since the revolution. The sons of the revolution are becoming confused. Since 1949, the army has been ordered to continue the long march towards communism and away from the capitalist road. But today in China, the orders are not so clear.
I love my motherland. I love the morning of my motherland.
念嘴念它。来看，预备，开始。
念的时候，一边念的时候啊，因为要众目远眺，而且呢，事情不要定在一个水平。
In the Shanghai film studios, a modern Chinese Romeo and Juliet have been enlisted to serve the new communist cause.
来，学报，来4秒啊，来预备，来啊，开始。
I love my motherland. I love the morning of my motherland.
嘿。
Love affair in Lushan, tells the story of the daughter of a nationalist general who fought against Mao Zedong. She falls in love with the son of a communist general. Such a film would have been unimaginable only 3 years ago. For a decade, only films of the most stupefying boredom and ideological purity were produced, all violently moralistic, anti-American, and with never a kiss on the screen.
让人看见了。
让人看见好了。在笑我们。
你太倔皮了。
Outside the studio, the socialist motherland is changing fast. Public displays of affection a few years ago would have earned a beating up by puritanical Red Guards. Now there are more decadent bourgeois habits and signs of capitalism than at any time since the revolution. For nearly 30 years, the Chinese people had been taught to hate the West and its consumer society. Now the thoughts of Chairman Mao are being replaced by advertising copywriters. The new road to revolution sometimes looks like a Pekingese Madison Avenue. Like Mrs. Thatcher, the Chinese leaders are now advocating profits, bonus payments, and material incentives. The Chinese leaders frankly admit the old methods of building communism weren't working. They now believe that only by publicly displaying the rewards of consumer goods and higher living standards will the people be induced to work to modernize China. But it's a highly delicate task to replace China's trio of communist superstars, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, by the man from Atlantis. Many Chinese have taken eagerly to the new policies of opening up to the West that are in total contrast to the previous official line of xenophobia, when all outsiders were foreign devils. Now the latest fashion is to wear sunglasses with the labels still on, to prove they were made in the West.
At present stage, the living standards has been improved. You see, in many families, there are got TV set, tape recorder, bicycles, and with the increased intercourse between the Chinese people and the foreign people, the Chinese people lived a more rich life.
Please, I don't add this line. Please, sorry.
But you were explaining to me how you can now talk to foreigners. I just wanted to know what the difference is.
Many Chinese are still profoundly wary about the latest political changes. They know that the vast party and police control apparatus remains intact. In Shanghai, the most populous city in the world, one young man said, "Please don't take photographic images of my face or record my voice. The secret police could find me in a moment. They have a network in every corner, in every street." Here in China, we can trust nobody, not even our parents. We must go somewhere where no one can see us. The Chinese Communist Party is determined that the introduction of Western goods will not lead to a breakdown of the discipline and order built up since the revolution. Having always denied there was any significant crime, the authorities now admit there are sex offences, smuggling, black marketeering and prostitution. But it's only after someone has been arrested and found guilty that the cases are reported in the press and on television. The trial of a gang led by the sons of high party officials. The prosecution accused the gang of being playboy lords. They had allegedly enticed 106 women to their mansion by inviting them to watch colour television and then gang raped them at knife point. The gang's leaders were condemned to death, to the delight of the court audience. One of the gang's leaders was given a 2-year stay of execution in case he can show an improved attitude. The other was taken straight to the execution site. The lesson is clear. There's no escape from the long arm of socialist justice. The man who was head of the secret police, Chairman Hua Guofeng, took over as nominal leader of China 4 years ago from Mao Zedong. Until last week, Chairman Hua was also Prime Minister. But the real power behind the chair, China's leader in all but name, is Deng Xiaoping. He's responsible for the new capitalist methods. Deng has been at the center of the battles between China's leaders since the revolution. 3 years ago, he was in deep political disgrace and in fear of his life. But like a Chinese Houdini, he has always escaped.
To tell you the truth, I haven't been to the top myself. I've only gone halfway and then I gave up. Actually, the more difficult thing is to come down.
From the communist headquarters in the Forbidden City, Deng Xiaoping is attempting to sell his new policies. As a former head of propaganda, he knows the problems of putting the whole elaborate information apparatus, built up since the revolution, into reverse. In place of egalitarianism and revolutionary struggle has come the ideological soft sell. Radio Peking's new signature tune provides syrup in place of stridency and introduces the new economic policies, the 4 modernizations.
关于修改宪法第45条，取消有运用大鸣大放大辩论大字报的权利的规定。
The 4 modernizations are science, industry, defense and agriculture. They all require contact with the West and radical changes in the way journalists are trained.
By Chinese investor Koba, Premier Hua smilingly shook hands with the law Prime Minister.
At their training school, young journalists practice reading together the recommended style for writing press reports in English.
By high-powered Chinese delegation.
Prime Minister Mrs. Thatcher and the British ambassador to China.
Until recently, the only foreign language the Chinese learnt was Albanian. Now English is essential for the 4 modernizations policy.
At the foot of the ladder, where the red carpet is rolled out,
the hand-picked good communists are all enthusiastic converts to the new capitalist methods.
What do you think he means when they say we want better life? Better than what? Better, comparative, better than what?
You must work hard to do more for the 4 modernization, so you can get more pay. Then you
More
can.
pay. Okay. So what will you do with the money that the country pays you to make your life better?
It's an interesting question.
So I'm asking. I want to know the answer.
At present, my living is very happy. But if I get more pay, I will take a tape recorder and a television.
You will have to save for 2 or 3 years before you can buy television. 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3.
2 or 3 years.
But I think I want to buy a color television set.
Deng Xiaoping's critics claim there are great dangers in using material incentives and consumer goods to build communism. Deng replies it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice. Deng is continually offering glimpses of the pleasures of modernization. The first boxing match in China since the 50s. Boxing was banned as individualistic and un-Chinese by the man who fought with Deng Xiaoping for 30 years on the best way to build communism. Mao Zedong and his supporters used the formidable propaganda machine to build the great helmsman to godlike status. Through the worship of one man, the people would be kept in a state of constant revolutionary frenzy. When he launched the Cultural Revolution 15 years ago, Mao's Red Guards screamed, "We'll cause chaos, turn the world upside down and smash it to pieces." "Better a socialist train that's late than a capitalist train that's on time," screamed the Red Guards. But now Deng Xiaoping is using the same propaganda machine to reverse Mao's policies, to destroy his memory and completely to rewrite China's recent history. The most passionate supporter of the Cultural Revolution was Mao's wife, who preached hatred of every foreigner except the Albanians, China's only ally in the world. Alongside Chairman Mao's personality cult, Madame Mao and her supporters in the media built up her image to prepare the Chinese for a woman chairman to take over when Mao died. Madame Mao's power base was Shanghai, where her supporters totally controlled the propaganda machine. But today in Shanghai, Deng Xiaoping's men are now in control of the press, radio and television. The editor of the main Shanghai paper was one of the first victims of the Cultural Revolution. He refused to obey the Red Guards and print their outpourings. They removed him. He'd been a devoted communist all his life, but the Red Guards subjected him to their own special brand of torture.
These are methods that we have never used, even against our enemies on the battlefield.
What actually happened to you?
The most painful thing was that I had to leave journalism.
In fact, Ma Da was accused by the Red Guards of revisionism. At a hysterical mass meeting in his own newspaper offices, he refused to criticize himself. The Red Guards dragged him away. He was sent to a re-education center for 7 years. He was forced to do 16 hours a day hard labor in the fields, interspersed by 5 long criticism sessions every day. He would be strung up by his arms, what the Chinese call jet planing, while Red Guards screamed at him to confess.
They make you stand with your arms behind your back in the shape of an airplane and make you lower your head to the ground. They were not doing it in search of any truth, but to make you suffer a ruthless torture.
This was Ma Da's daily routine for 7 years until 1973. His spine and his neck have been left permanently injured.
Because of all the hard labor, I was terribly run down. As a consequence, I lost all my teeth.
It's now clear that Ma Da was only one of millions of victims of the Cultural Revolution, the collective delirium inspired by Chairman Mao that lasted until 4 years ago. The Cultural Revolution was the most inspiring period, said China's leaders until recently. The people remember it differently. Now the communist leaders say the Cultural Revolution caused a very great disaster. And Deng Xiaoping admits, our party's prestige among the people is not as high as it used to be. In the past, said Deng, the party simply issued one call and the whole country acted accordingly. In those 10 years of the Cultural Revolution, untold numbers were killed, said Deng Xiaoping earlier this year. He blamed it all on Madame Mao and her 3 closest supporters, the Gang of Four. They were arrested immediately after Mao's death in 1976 and are still awaiting trial. The official line today is that since the arrest of the Gang of Four, everything in China has changed. Deng Xiaoping, who'd been purged twice in 10 years as a counter-revolutionary freak and a stinking capitalist roader, came back to power in 1977. Deng determined to remove all Mao's mouthpieces from power and to use Western capitalist methods to transform China into a modern industrial nation. Deng's men now control the press, radio and television with a single message. The Gang of Four is out, the 4 modernizations are in.
After smashing Gang of Four, with my own experience, I felt there's a world of difference between the time of Gang of Four and the present time.
The party draw some lessons from the downfall of the Gang of Four, have improved their working style. And besides, the democracy both among the party and among the whole China has prevailed.
So everyone tried to contribute their bit to promote the realization for modernizations.
We are working together for the same goal. That means the 4 modernizations.
But you said that, but during the time of the Gang of Four, everyone said everything in China is wonderful.
Just because at that time, you see, people don't tell the truth. You see, on one hand, they don't dare to tell the truth. Besides, they couldn't see the true things.
Falsehood in news is like rat droppings in clear soup, the party paper now says. Since Deng Xiaoping's men took over the People's Daily, they've attempted to inject it with some credibility. Mao's portraits no longer appear on the front page every day. No longer is every single article in praise of Chairman Mao. Now his name is scarcely mentioned, except to attack him. The paper now publishes letters to the editor criticizing bureaucracy, shoddy workmanship, and even corrupt low-level party officials. And this summer, the People's Daily admitted that for the past 20 years, it had often deliberately concocted stories and had carried packs of lies. The journalists now say they had no choice. They were only obeying orders.
They worked according to the instructions given by the chief editor at that time. They don't have their own opinions. They didn't have their own opinion.
I mean, how did you feel?
I thought that at that time I was also forced to do that. Write articles, got into their lines, their instructions.
What did it feel like for you when they told you to write articles that you didn't want to write?
I just say, okay, I should do this or that. That's all.
Why did you do that?
Because the chief editor ordered you to do that. You should obey. No democracy at that time. Yeah, in People's Daily.
Do you think there's democracy in the People's Daily now?
Yeah, there are more democracy now in the People's Daily. That is, the changes have taken place after the downfall of the Gang of Four.
The New Democracy in the People's Daily does not include the right to criticize in any way the leaders of the Communist Party. The party's Central Committee has a direct line to the editor-in-chief. The editors of the People's Daily have received one of their regular telephone calls from Deng Xiaoping's protégé in the Politburo. He wants them to write another article praising the four modernizations policy. The editors say that during the Cultural Revolution, the People's Daily slogan was, "News is lies. No great task can be accomplished without deceiving people." Now their slogan is, "Communists must tell the truth."
Now the readers believe that what the People's Daily carry out is correct. But during the rule of the Ganfor, the people considered what People's Daily carry out are the lies, nonsense. So the people at that time didn't believe that, but now has been changed. The people believe in the People's Daily. That's all.
But how do I know that I won't come back to China in 5 years' time and people will say, everything I told you 5 years ago was lies? How do I know that?
Because at that time the whole situation is that the media has been controlled by the Ganfor, the media. So the paper told the people lies, nonsense. So the 5 years later has been changed. Not only in the content of the People's Daily, but also in the style as well.
The main attraction of the People's Daily is still that it provides readers with their only clues as to how their highly secretive government operates. The message is often opaque. The order of names of those attending a banquet or the exact position of different leaders in a photograph indicates the ups and downs in the Politburo. China watchers include nearly 1 billion Chinese. The main purpose of the People's Daily is endlessly to repeat the latest policy slogans. There are 6,000 different Chinese language characters, but Deng's new message is printed so often that the typesetters have piled up a clutch of cliches.
Have you got as an expression, after the smashing of the Gang of Four?
粉碎四人帮以后。
这几个字，粉碎四人帮以后。
What about the success of the four modernizations?
4个现代化的成功。
4个现代化的成功。
And the last one is, the people and the party are working with one heart and one mind.
最后一句话就是人民和党同心同德。
人民和党同心同德。
After smashing Gang of Four, the people are working much harder and even studiously to for modernizations. Indeed, they are working with one mind, one heart.
News in China comes from only one source, the official New China News Agency. All stories come into the agency's Peking headquarters, where they're monitored and rewritten on special Chinese typewriters. The agency employs over 5,000 people, with full-time reporters all over the country and part-timers in every factory, commune and mine. It provides all the news that's fit to print to the national and local papers in China, as well as to the radio and television. All news must serve the party, says the agency that's under armed guard day and night, like all information centres in China. News is something someone somewhere doesn't want you to print, said one American newspaper tycoon. And in China, where the most reliable source of information is often rumour, there is a privileged news service available to the Communist Party elite. The higher you are in the party, the more of the truth you're allowed to know. The news service comes at 3 different levels. None has ever been seen before outside China. The first, called Reference News, is a 4-page paper that includes uncensored reports from Western newspapers and news agencies that would never appear in the normal Chinese press. It's produced, like the two other privileged news services, by Xinhua, the New China News Agency. Its circulation is restricted to middle-level party officials. Above reference news comes reference materials, a 96-page bulletin that's produced twice a day and includes critical articles about China from abroad, as well as internal news not thought fit for the masses. It's only for senior party officials. Finally, there's the highly secret big reference that's only for top leadership and is printed in extra-large type to make it easier for the old men who run China to read. But don't you think it's dangerous for one news agency to have a total monopoly on all the news in China?
Well, I think Xinhua News Agency has close contacts with the people of China. So it not only propagates the party as well as the government's policies, but also it reflects the desires, the wishes of the ordinary people of China, including peasants, workers, and intellectuals. So I don't think there is any danger in this respect.
I just wonder, you haven't said that the aim of the agency is to tell the truth. Would you think that that is one part of the aim of the agency?
Oh yes, this is the important part of the news agency, that is to tell the truth to the people. You are right.
But would the New China News Agency ever criticize the political leaders of China?
Well, you see, the job of Xinhua is to make positive suggestions. We made a lot of positive suggestions on the work of the government. So we have done a lot in this respect.
But with respect, you haven't answered the question. I wonder if you would ever, in the New China News Agency, ever criticize the political leaders of China?
Well, I think I have also already answered your questions.
From their earliest days, Chinese children are trained to be loyal communists. The generation gap is bigger and more important in China than anywhere else in the world. The country is run from the top by a gerontocracy. But young people make up more than half the population of China. And if the Chinese birth rate continues at its present level, within a century, China will encompass a population equal to that of the Earth's today. Deng Xiaoping is trying to whip up for the modernization drive the spirit of revolutionary zeal which brought communism to power in 1949. The young pioneers pledged their loyalty to the four modernizations. We will work hard, study well, and progress every day. We will become all-rounders and future revolutionaries. The old people have seen it all before. The young pioneers have been instructed to lay wreaths for the latest communist leader to be officially rehabilitated, Liu Shaoqi. He supported Deng's capitalist methods. He was head of state and Mao Zedong's designated successor. But Liu was suddenly denounced as a traitor, renegade and scab by his comrades, tortured with Mao's approval, and died in prison 10 years ago. Now Liu has been rehabilitated as a man of boundless rectitude and awe-inspiring righteousness. With every rehabilitation, the older generation tend less and less to believe in leaders at all. But the pioneers are still too young to know anything of the battles in the Politburo which Mao Zedong fought against Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. Many of the young pioneers' older brothers and sisters have direct experience of the system in action, and they don't like what they've seen. The Cultural Revolution brought many young people educational ruin and deep political disillusion. Unemployed youngsters are disaffected and often delinquent. They are joined by former Red Guards who are now social and political pariahs. The official party press devotes anguished columns to combating low morale, indolence, and urban crime. Those without a job see the massive overmanning there is all over China. To the question, how many Chinese does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is plenty. Jobs in China are for life. No one gets sacked. They have what's called an iron rice bowl. In a speech earlier this year, Deng Xiaoping said that 30 years of proletarian dictatorship have turned many communist officials into privileged, self-seeking despots. And he frankly admitted that as a result of his new policies, the penetration of the influence of bourgeois ideology is inevitable. When he regained power, Deng Xiaoping reproduced the Mao Zedong slogan of 20 years ago: "Let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend." He allowed the publication of masses of unofficial and dissident magazines. One leading dissident wrote that the 4 modernizations would be meaningless without the 5th modernization, democracy. And for a few brief, heady months, Democracy Wall in Peking and other cities became a startling symbol of the new opening up in China. Deng at first called Democracy Wall a good thing. He allowed dissidents to sell their unofficial magazines from the top of the wall, but the magazines and wall posters began to demand human rights and Western-style freedoms. And the dissidents published details of corruption, greed, incompetence and nepotism by Communist Party leaders. Suddenly one night, it was all over. The authorities closed down Democracy Wall and hosed off all the posters. It became a crime again for any Chinese to give his address or telephone number to a foreigner. Instead of Democracy Wall in the middle of Peking, the communist authorities designated a new site in a remote park in the outskirts of the city. All posters had to be officially submitted for advanced scrutiny and clearance by the authorities. Within a short time, it became known as Bureaucracy Wall. Now it's hardly used at all. What happened at Democracy Wall could lead to chaos if we allowed such things to spread unchecked, said Deng. And he ordered the arrest of the leading dissident, a former Red Guard, Wei Jingshen, editor of the most outspoken magazine. Wei was given a televised show trial. His alleged crimes were that he'd produced counter-revolutionary writings and revealed state secrets to foreign journalists. Wei had published a series of wall posters and articles claiming China was a brutal dictatorship and attacking Deng Xiaoping by name. The verdict was never in doubt. Wei wasn't allowed to call any witnesses in his defense. And one of the main prosecution witnesses was his former deputy editor, who had decided, as the official press revealingly put it, under the patient education of the Public Security Bureau, to confess his counter-revolutionary crimes. Only a few months earlier, he'd written this letter in English, expressing his heartfelt love for democracy and freedom. Wei himself was unrepentant. He denied that he'd passed on state secrets, saying he didn't know any. He claimed that without democracy, the four modernizations were nothing but lies and a fraud. Democracy means that people must have the freedom to criticize China's political leaders, who are men and not gods, said Wei. Wei was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Earlier this year, Deng Xiaoping admitted it had been decided to make a special example of him. A few people can sabotage our great cause. The 15-year sentence on Wei could be considered reasonable, said Deng.
You see, if you put forward this question of Wei Jingsheng, well, he is it is a different story, I say. It is a different story. Because all he had done is against the socialist country, against the constitution. And also he sold intelligence news to foreigners. So it is a different story.
At the offices of the People's Daily, where the soldiers regularly carry out target practice, the paper led a media campaign of vilification against Wei Jingsheng. Wei represents the scum of Chinese youth. He and his bunch regard socialism as inferior to capitalism. And Deng Xiaoping announced that from now on, the right to put up wall posters would be banned. All unofficial magazines had to be registered for state approval. After Wei's imprisonment, almost all the dissident publications closed down, apart from this one in Peking. The editor was a 36-year-old electrical worker, Xu Wenli. Xu's co-editor was arrested for distributing the text of the proceedings of Wei's trial. The official Chinese news media had not carried a single word of Wei's powerful defense statement. Xu and his colleagues learnt that their co-editor was sentenced to 3 years hard labor. But Xu was still prepared to talk publicly, though he had to be filmed in secret. In his magazine, he attacked the imprisonment of Wei Jingsheng.
对魏京生的判决啊，我曾经发表过一篇文章，叫做《不公正的判决》啊。但是尽管我认为它不公正，但是它基本上还能够从法治的这个角度上去进行这件事情啊。对这一点的话，应该给予肯定。
How much political freedom do you think there is in China today?
你认为现在在中国有多少政治自由？
现在中国自从粉碎四人帮之后，啊，这个情况有很大的变化。在政治上的自由，应该说人民享有的是越来越多了一些，当然还不尽完善，还是很不充分的，但是现在的阶段呢是起步了，开始起步，开始认识到人民只有人民的民主和自由，才可能的话呢保证这个社会的繁荣和稳定。
Why was it necessary to close down Democracy Wall?
Well, you see, on the Democratic Wall, everyone, without put on his name, can blame or charge any person without any ground. They can do it without any legal obligation. Do you think in England, do you have this kind of freedom? I don't think so.
We have freedom of speech in England.
Oh yes, freedom of speech, but freedom of charges without putting on names. And some of the charges are without any ground. Because in the Cultural Revolution, many people were criticized because of those posters.
But we're not talking about the time of the Cultural Revolution. We're talking about now, where a number of dissidents have actually produced publications or put up
posters on Democracy Wall which talk about human rights, and now Democracy Wall has been closed down.
What kind of human rights they want?
They want democratic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to say what they think.
Freedom to blame any person without putting on his own name in the wallpaper. Do you think that is a kind of freedom? All right. I don't think so.
Do you think that there's freedom of speech? The way it looks in the West is that the moment the lid came off for a second in China and people made contact with Western journalists...
I think I have to go for some work to do.
In view of what happened to Wei, who was sentenced to 15 years in prison, are you not afraid of giving this interview?
你现在知道那个魏晋胜坐15年的监狱，你不是怕这次跟我们见面吗？
真理呀，如果被人所掌握，就给人以力量。我觉得我追求的是真理，这个为的是国家和民族的利益再去追求真理。所以从这个意义上来说，不管出现什么情况，是被抓起来或者不被抓起来，那都是不会害怕的。所以的话呢，我认为只要中国能够继续保持向法治社会前进的这样子一种步伐，我绝不担心对我的安全上有什么这个可怕的事情会发生当然，尽管如果因为某种误解发生了这样子的事情，我觉得的话，历史也会做出公正的判断的。
As the oldest continuous civilization in the world, the Chinese have a powerful sense of history. The leaders of the Communist Party believe it's on their side, even if they have to rewrite it every few months. But the latest revision is the most difficult of all. How far and how fast to push Chairman Mao into disgrace? Until 4 years ago, every Chinese was taught to chant, 1,000 years to Chairman Mao, the great leader, the great helmsman, the red sun shining in our hearts, dearer to us than our parents. Now the great helmsman is sinking. In Shanghai, the sign saying, "Long live the victory of Chairman Mao's revolutionary road," is coming down. And the hated Gang of Four is now derided as the Gang of Five. Its real leader was Chairman Mao, they say. And in Peking, outside the Department of Public Tranquility, in fact the headquarters of the secret police, they're removing the thoughts of Chairman Mao. But even in the most tightly disciplined society in the world, there must be a limit to the number of times slogans can be erased, policies reversed, heroes purged, and devils idolized. In his attempts to inspire the Chinese to work with one heart and one mind for the four modernizations, Deng knows there are many people fearful to commit themselves to the latest change of direction, lest tomorrow they're attacked as stinking capitalist roaders and bourgeois reactionaries. As the Chinese proverb puts it, a man who's been bitten by a snake is afraid of a coil of rope.